Hello, and welcome to Moving Up North, a podcast from Walk Ride GM. I'm Will York.
And I'm Harry Gray.
And this week, we're going to be talking about Harry's recent escapades in stolen bike recovery.
Will's new job at Cycling UK.
Yeah, I'm quite excited about my new job. We're going to be talking about today's budget announced by Rachel Reeves in the House of Commons.
We just rushed over from...
we literally had to sort of abandon it halfway through and listen on the radio on our way down to the podcast studio.
Yeah, so hot off the press, that.
We're going to be talking about Kingsway, the new scheme in Stretford.
Yeah, very excited about that one.
And the upcoming Walk Ride GM Awards, which we do each year. So, Harry, you were on the front page of the Times.
Well, not myself personally, but yes, I was sort of in writing on the front page.
You were mentioned.
Yes, I was. I was mentioned as the sort of the man in the control room.
So, give us a scoop. Tell us what's gone on.
So, a few days ago, my mate had his bike stolen in London, and we saw it on Gumtree the next day. So we sort of devised a plan to get it back, which kind of involved at first us sort of messaging him, getting his address, and then meeting him and buying it. But we actually managed to get the police involved at the last minute, and we actually basically did a sting operation where we got the bike back, got the criminal in cuffs taken away, and the story kind of went viral on my Twitter, got picked up by a few journalists, and there's a Times article, there's a BBC London sort of programme on it, there's going to be Times Radio tomorrow morning, so it is sort of taken off, and it just shows how big of an issue bike theft is, and the reaction you get from it shows how emotional people are about bike theft and how much they want it to be fixed and solved.
And I think it's part of the reason why it's a news story, right, is because it feels quite rare for this to happen, for the police to actually get involved and for people to get their stolen bikes back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the statistics, but I think, a fraction of bike thefts get solved. And, we were the lucky ones that managed to get my friend's bike back. But for other people, they're not so lucky. And they have to, pay thousands of pounds to get a new bike or, insurance claims and stuff like that. So it is a real big issue, and this kind of highlights the need for the police to be more proactive. We have a lot of open source data now that police can utilise to catch these thieves, and I guess part of this sort of campaign with the recovery, the heist, is to sort of suggest that the police really need to use these resources, because it's actually a small amount of people who commit these crimes are the total number of bikes stolen. So if you catch these sort of people and gangs who are stealing bikes, it kind of opens up a can of worms for drug dealing and other bike theft is a serious crime, but for other even more serious crimes around it. So it's a thing that I guess it's become a campaign from this kind of heist that me and my friend organised. It's turned into this campaign, so we'll be on the sort of radios and the TV and pushing that agenda out there so that we can get more bikes recovered after they've been stolen. Well, I've heard that you have a new job, so tell all about this role that you've just taken up.
So I've just started 3 weeks ago. I've started as a behaviour change officer with Cycling UK, which I'm really excited about. Most of our listeners already probably know Cycling UK is the UK's national cycle charity. Has been going since 1878, formerly known as the Cycle Tourists Club. But I think is really sort of reinventing itself over recent years as an active travel organisation. It used to be quite focused on leisure and sort of cycle tourism, and now is very much sort of on the same page as the stuff we've been asking for as campaigners in GM.
What we'd call utility cycling, the everyday cycling for not for leisure, just for getting about and doing sort of your everyday tasks. I think it's really important that there's representation on that on a national level. And we're actually meeting with Cycling UK later in the week to sort of discuss further how Walk Ride GM and Cycling UK can work together to represent the UK as a whole on this kind of mission that we both share. So what are you actually doing for Cycling UK?
Specifically, I'm going to be working on our free e-cycle loan programme, which is now funded by Transport for Greater Manchester. You can come along and you can borrow an e-bike for free for a month, no strings attached.
Yeah, and I've actually had a few friends who've used this a few years ago to hire an e-bike, and they ended up going afterwards and buying their own electric bike, and now they've sort of stopped driving as much, and now they're using the e-bike to get about and do everyday things. So it's actually really working in practice.
That's really good to hear. I mean, and we're hearing those kind of stories from a lot of people using the program, that e-bikes can really change your life and change how you make journeys. But you've got to have, you want the opportunity to try one out, to see what it's like, see how it fits into your life. So that's what this program does.
It's really important that like people, when they come up like against a choice like this, purchasing a new electric bike, a few grand, let's say, that's a big obstacle into a modal shift, because people aren't just going to go spend $2,000 on something that they're not sure about and they've not used before. So it's really good that they get it for a month and they get to just test it out, sort of integrate it into their daily lives for a month. And by the end, they think, I couldn't live without it. So that's the best thing about it.
And I'm actually quietly optimistic that we may start to see more subsidies in this country in the future to help people have access to buying an electric bike. That's what they do over, in France. Like if you're a student, you can get a huge discount on a new e-bike because they recognise the difference it will make to people's lives.
And that ties in nicely to the budget, which has just been announced today, hot off the press, as we were heading over to the podcast recording studio. We had a quick chance to listen, take it in. No details in terms of documents yet have been announced, but we've got the headline figures from the budget in the House of Commons. And I have to say, that first headline with the fuel duty freeze, I mean, that was I found that quite shocking. I thought we were going to get an increase in fuel duty, and especially with the bus announcement, the bus increasing by 50% to £3 from £2. I mean, that sounds like a slap in the face to sustainable travel, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Fuel duty's been frozen for 11 or 12 successive years so far. So effectively, the real cost of motoring, or at least of burning fuel, has been massively reduced, while rail fares, for example, have just gone up and up in that same period.
Yeah, and it's not only has it been frozen, it actually, they took 5p off it in the last budget, the last Conservative budget. So we've actually had a reduction in fuel duty over 14 years when inflation has been, incredibly high. So it is, I think, it just shows actually how powerful the sort of motor lobby is in terms of lobbying for these kind of policies. And it also speaks to how maybe active travel, we're not as powerful in the way that we lobby for these sort of national campaigns and national funding pots. So
I think the motor lobby has been very successful in presenting motorists as just ordinary people, just normal people, just trying to get by. And, that's true. Like, most people do use cars, and cars are useful for lots of things. But we're running into this thing where it's being erroneously presented as the only option, like the only viable option. You can't hurt motorists because everyone in the country would just be stranded in their homes without
their cars. And I think it's important to suggest there that like people aren't just homogenous blocks divided into the way that they travel. Like people are drivers, and they also cycle, and they also walk, and they also get the bus and the train. And people are fluid. They want to make decisions based on, what's easier and what costs less. And if we can make, driving if the incentive to drive is lower and the incentive to get the bus or walk or cycle is higher, then people will make the switch, and we've got to enable people to make that switch. Moving on to the rest of the budget, a bit later on in the budget, we were waiting for a while actually to hear specifically about transport. The first headline news is that devolution is coming next year. There'll be settlements for the West Midlands and Greater Manchester. So the Mayor, Andy Burnham, his team can actually dictate how much spending goes on transport, on health, housing in the local area, rather than that being a decision made in Whitehall. So that's a really, really good piece of news, because obviously that decision being closer to Greater Manchester means that we as campaigners in Greater Manchester have more control when we lobby local government to make the right decision on active travel spending.
So there's been a lot of numbers thrown out today about capital spending on transport. £3 billion between the devolved city regions for transport. £650 million announced in local transport funding, but I don't think active travel was specifically mentioned once. Oh, just seen published written stuff from the budget today, providing an additional £100 million investment in cycling and walking infrastructure in 2025 to 26. Now, obviously, we need to understand what that figure means. Like, is that 100 million outside of what's happening in those city regions that are receiving like separate settlements, or is it 100? I mean, £100 million nationally is actually not very big money. It sounds like a good figure, but Greater Manchester could easily spend £50 million a year on walking and cycling. That's the reality.
Yeah, if we are going to meet the targets that we want to set with the B network expansion. So yeah, 100 million to me doesn't sound like the biggest settlement, but like you said, just depends on whether that's being spent outside of London, Manchester and Birmingham, or if that includes all the major cities. So I guess we'll just have to see where that allocation's actually going.
We've also seen in the same document that the city region sustainable transport settlements are continuing, or like it's existing funding that's been confirmed is definitely still going to go ahead. Now, the thing with those is they're big pots of money, they're good pots of money, they're intended to be used at least partly for active travel alongside things like buses. But what's really been needed for a while is governance over how that money is spent, because as we've spoken about before, there's been a bit of a problem where this money that says in the guidance it has to improve cycling to align with the government's cycling strategies. It's just being spent on roads and not on active travel.
Yeah, and it's a bit. We're still in this phase, really, post of the Conservative government and this transition phase to a Labour government, where we've not got clarity on what all these settlements actually mean. It looks like spring will be the time we get a bit more sort of meat on the bone on active travel. Obviously for devolution, it's a different story. Like there is a bit of grey area about, the pipeline of schemes and funding that's coming on from central government for devolved places like Greater Manchester. Like when does that cut off happen? And we don't really know the details at the moment, and it's quite hard to decipher from that budget speech like what it actually means. But what we can go off is what we've heard from Louise Haigh in her interview on Streets Ahead, saying that there will be 5-year settlements, there will be more funding for active travel, and the fact that the government have been so solid today on capital investment rather than everyday spending, like that to me suggests that we will see an increase in spending on active travel. And what's interesting is even the things on potholes, on the grapevine, I've heard that the money spent on potholes, maintenance funds, that's also available for active travel too. So there's more to it than maybe it seems, but, the headline isn't as, there's nothing to tweet out as a headline, is there? We're sort of missing that.
I guess one thing that this does suggest is that our regional campaigning will be as important as ever. If Andy Burnham is getting something like £3 billion to allocate to transport projects, obviously our job is to make sure that a healthy, appropriate chunk of that gets spent on walking and cycling.
Yeah, and the B network is integral to the success of not only Andy Burnham's administration, but it's integral to the success of the Labour government too. So, and active travel is at the heart of the B network. We will, as a campaign group, make sure that decision makers in the city know how important active travel is to the B network. So when allocation of funds is divvied up for sustainable travel through the B network, walking and cycling will be at the top of the agenda for us as a campaign group, and we'll be lobbying pretty hard to make sure that those figures go into delivery of better places to live, work, shop and go to school. And that's such an important part of the B network. So let's bring it back to Greater Manchester, to what's being delivered in the city. And a scheme in Stretford has just finished, which I have to say we were very excited by. It's been in the pipeline for a couple of years now, and it is the regeneration of Stretford town centre, and specifically Kingsway, which used to be this horrendous dual carriageway, guardrails either side, kind of a desolate kind of place really for walking and cycling, and it's been transformed into this green, vibrant space with breakout spaces for people playing, people who just want to chill out, sit on a bench, even lie on a sun lounger in the sun, which I have seen people do, including myself.
Yeah, it's amazing that sort of some people on social media seem to have manufactured a controversy about sun loungers, and they're like, "Oh, it's in Stretford. Have you not seen the weather? It rains all the time. Why would you put silly deck chairs out?" I've never seen them not being used. I work just around the corner now. It's the middle of October and people are still sort of just sitting out there. As long as it's not actually chucking it down, people are having a great time.
Newsflash. Coats exist and people can sit outside with coats on, and that's just like a real innovative technology that we've just invented, I've heard.
And it's a pleasant place to be. I mean, this is a point that we've made on the podcast before, that active travel is about placemaking. It is about not just having a bike lane on the road and everything remaining grey tarmac and everything remaining fast moving. It's about building places where people want to spend time instead of just get through as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and you know what really excited me about that scheme? I didn't even think about how good the bike lanes were at first. It was literally just about how green it looks, how exciting the public realm is, how much of a change it makes to the local community. And my first instinct was just looking at the people's houses next to it, thinking, wow, these houses are now, they've gone from living next to a horrible main road with pollution and all what comes with that, noise, and now they live next to a really tranquil looking kind of bit of public realm with suds and greenery and benches, and it's like, well, wouldn't mind living there now, and you wouldn't imagine that before. And it's about bringing back a sense of respect and dignity to where people live. Actually, that's what's so important about these schemes. But I do actually have a slightly contrasting opinion to you there, which is I am a bit skeptical of every single scheme in Greater Manchester being to this standard, this quality, because I do worry that this kind of approach might, be good for a 400-metre stretch of road. But with the budgets that we have on active travel, we've gotten, even with the increase in active travel spending that we'll get with devolution, I still don't think, we're going to have the resources to make every single street across Greater Manchester look like this. And I do think that a network approach to active travel, specifically cycling, is still really important. And schemes like Chorlton Cycleway, which, let's be frank, isn't the prettiest scheme, but it delivers a continuous cycle network from Chorlton all the way to the city centre. So you can't discount how important a network approach is, and maybe other councils like Manchester are being a bit more pragmatic with their resources to get the best buck for the money that they're spending on active travel.
I'd be really interested to see what the future network plan for this area is, what's actually going to happen, because I've seen some of even our campaigners mildly criticising the Kingsway scheme just because of it being so short. And it's, it is only a short stretch between two main roads, between two relatively busy junctions. But I think it is a network scheme. It's one link in the chain. This Kingsway is, it's relatively short stretch next to Stretford Road. But if you're cycling from, say, Urmston, anywhere sort of West Trafford out to that end of the city region, to Didsbury, Stockport, Chorlton, the route you're going to take is probably along Kingsway, along Edge Lane, along Barlow Moor Road. Those roads are far from perfect, but I think the fact that Kingsway has been done to such an amazingly high quality is setting an example and almost drawing a line in the sand, saying, yes, this sort of long direct route across South Manchester needs to be done, and it will get done eventually. And
it sets the sort of bar for what is possible, and what, the ceiling, for what is possible, so other councils can aspire to that. But, I think Trafford have been quite savvy here with the way they spent money, because they have looked at a network approach. Kingsway is a destination, right? So they focused a lot of resources on making it look really nice. But for other parts of the network, the A56, isn't a destination. So they focused resources more pragmatically on creating a network through there, just adapting the road, adding bus stop bypasses and light segregation. And that hasn't been transformational. There's not been suds or greenery or public realm added there, but that adds to the network that Kingsway is also contributing to. So I think we've just got to take a look at it more strategically here and allocate resources in a bit more of a clever way, prioritising public realm in sort of destination areas, and then obviously prioritising the network maybe in places which aren't places where people are congregating. So alongside the Kingsway scheme, Trafford actually got their walking and cycling forum, or walking, cycling and wheeling forum, back up and running. And I went to the first, the sort of day, let's say the reincarnation of it.
Could you explain what that forum is and who runs it and why?
So the forum is run by the council. It had Aidan Williams there, sort of kicked it off. He is the exec for climate. We also had some officers there and highways officers there, sort of pitching their sort of work and what they're doing in active travel. So we had some stuff about school streets, about engagement around behaviour change. We had the highways talk about the network plan and what the network's going to look like going forward, what is in the pipeline. Really transparent, really open about the ambition that Trafford has, but also collaborative. There was a session at the end where we all sat down in groups and we all wrote on pieces of paper what we want to see from the forum and what we want to see from Trafford going forward, what our sort of aims, goals, desires are as sort of residents and people who visit Trafford. So yeah, it was a really collaborative forum. Great to have it in person as well. That opportunity to network in person, meet people, build relationships, again, drives that agenda forward.
Also this past month, we had a very successful conference at Eden in Salford.
Yeah, Muse were very accommodating. They set us up at their wonderful new development in New Bailey, which is this beautiful building with lots of green sort of plants all over the wall, one of the largest green walls in the UK, I think. And it was an amazing day. We had a collaboration with the University of Manchester and the University of Salford. We put on workshops, we put on panels, we put on a walking and a cycling infrastructure tour in the middle of the day to break the day up. It was really engaging, and you know what, at the end of the day, I actually heard from people saying how good it was, from not directly, people were saying to me, someone said who didn't come, they said, it was such a good event, they told me about it. So look, it was a great event for us, and it was our first policy event, which, policy to a lot of the time, it can be some people can be, a bit turned off by policy specifically, but it is important that we upskill people in Greater Manchester to sort of get on top of the policies so that they can enable themselves to be better campaigners.
It was brilliant to participate in workshops with local councillors who've been on the ground, who understand what it's like to be assailed by angry residents on all sides. And, I think a message that a lot of people took away was how important it is to show councillors the appetite, the voice, the community who do want change, who don't just want to maintain the status quo and, keep things the way they've been for 30 years.
Yeah, and it was also important to, I guess, showcase Walk Ride GM as a really serious group with serious intentions for active travel delivery going forward. Being, working alongside Muse, being in a building of this sort of the scale of Eden, I think it sort of put us on that table saying, look, we're really, the people in Greater Manchester who are sort of fighting for delivery and active travel. And I think professionalising the way that we deal and we sort of communicate with councillors, it speaks to the idea that maybe in the past campaigners have been a bit, there's been a bit of confrontation and bad blood maybe between the way that campaigners and councillors engage. And I think resetting that at the event was a great opportunity to really just show that we're all humans and we're all trying to get the same thing done at the end of the day. And we just need to learn how to work together better to get the same results that we both desire.
And really good to have some North Manchester voices at last coming through. Naz from Heaton Park Bike Hub made some really impassioned points about like the community of North Manchester feeling a bit left behind. I mean, we've just been talking about Trafford, we're talking about the Chorlton Cycleway. It is true that I think now's the time to build some momentum to provide like equitable access to active modes of transport across the city region, not just those affluent areas.
Yeah, and that conference set up that, those sort of relationships, because there were people from Manchester City Council at the event, and they connected with Naz, and we're going to have a little safari around North Manchester, around Cheetham Hill with the council. So these events are really important for that kind of just keeping the conversations going, keeping the real in-person real conversations happening that drive the sort of narrative and drive the energy for change. A lot of what we started with Walk Around GM happened during COVID, and it is quite easy to fall back on doing everything online, being an online campaign where everyone just, it's all, we have this, love the Discord, don't get me wrong, but the Discord has to be a place where we enable real life action, real life debate, and, real life engagement. Finally, coming up to the end of the year, we have the annual Walk Ride GM Awards.
I actually find these really exciting. It's quite exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, because I love like getting all the categories and getting all the nominations. So on our Discord, if you come onto our Discord, you can join the debate, the discussion, and actually vote on our categories and nominations. One of them is about, the best council of the year. We've got stuff on school streets, best scheme. So yeah, come to the Discord and you'll be able to vote.
And it's really, it sounds like a bit of fun, and that's how it started. Our long-standing campaign at Owler, I think, started them last year with a vote for best council.
Yeah, and last year we had Trafford win the best council, so we are eagerly anticipating who will take the crown for best council this year.
And it's an important campaign tool. Like Trafford were over the moon. They were absolutely thrilled to get that award. And, with good reason. Like, how often do councils really get recognition for this stuff? And this is a chance for us, to have a light-hearted thing, but also to give councils real community feedback. What have they done that's good? Where hasn't been so good? What schemes do the people who actually use them consider to be a success?
Yeah, and you said it so real there. Like councils, rarely get credit. Let's say they get so much hate online about what they do. So we are in a position to really champion the work that councils do. And you said it is lighthearted, but I think it's quite a serious thing in the sense that it gives councils that political space to be proud of what they have worked on over the last year. That's it for this month's instalment of Moving Up North. I hope you enjoyed our new package, our new rebrand. We're dead excited about it. There's some Easter eggs in that logo too. So yeah, really excited about the path we're going on with this new podcast. And we'll see you next time.